Happy Monday, and welcome to another episode of Cases That Should Have Gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. Today, we're talking about lawyers misappropriating trust funds and their mental health. Cases that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. In Alberta, Shawn Beaver, a lawyer, was accused of misappropriating funds from his trust account. Ultimately, after a Law Society investigation, it was determined that he had misappropriated in excess of $300,000 over several years. Mr. Beaver challenged the Law Society's discipline measures, which ultimately resulted in him being disbarred. And among the challenges that he brought, and there were many and they were numerous, was this argument that he had mental health issues that contributed to the decisions that he made to withdraw client trust funds and use them for his own purposes. He argued that his mental health ought to have been considered by the Law Society in assessing not only whether his conduct amounted to the level of misconduct that the Law Society should take into account in imposing such a significant sanction, but also mitigated his conduct to the degree that a sanction of disbarment wasn't as appropriate as it might be in another case. The Court of Appeal for Alberta disagreed, and ultimately Mr. Beaver's application for leave to appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada was dismissed. And this case does raise important issues. Well, the evidence that was ultimately found in Mr. Beaver's case found that the types of stresses that he was experiencing that took a toll on his mental health were the expected stresses that a senior member of the legal profession would be experiencing or could be experiencing. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't be important for the Supreme Court of Canada to chime in on the role in which mental health plays in assessing the severity of somebody's conduct and the appropriateness of a penalty for that conduct in professional regulated disciplines. Studies have shown that lawyers, doctors, dentists, people working in regulated professions often have more mental health issues than people who aren't working in these regulated professions. And this often comes from the stresses of the job, but in addition, other stresses that can happen, including issues with respect to addiction or other mental health issues. And so the Supreme Court of Canada had the opportunity here to really carve out, in a point in time, in a point in history where we are looking more closely at the role in which our mental health plays in our behavior, carve out a way in which people who are experiencing mental health struggles can raise those, and to provide a good framework for regulatory bodies to use when assessing the conduct of an individual to determine whether they are less morally blameworthy. The Supreme Court of Canada has the expertise to write these types of tests because the Supreme Court of Canada does this often when it comes to assessing moral blameworthiness on sentence appeals, which they hear all the time. This wouldn't be a difficult task for the Supreme Court of Canada, but it could have a significant benefit, not just to members of professions, not just to the regulatory bodies themselves, but also to members of the public, so that they know what can be expected if they are victimized by somebody who is experiencing a mental health concern. And it can also allow people who are participating in these investigations to know what type of evidence may be necessary to make out their case. Ultimately, the Supreme Court of Canada could have taken this opportunity to really clarify the law in this area in a way that would have lasting benefits over time, and it's unfortunate that they didn't. Cases that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Cases That Should Have Gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. I'm Kyla Lee at Acumen Law Corporation. Thank you to Brazenable Creative for putting together these videos. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.